now. All right, the Brothers Grimm, Briar Rose. A king and a queen once upon a time reigned in a country a great way off, where they were in those days fairies. Now this king and queen had plenty of money and plenty of fine clothes to wear, and plenty of good things to eat and drink, and a couch to ride, and a coach to ride out in every day. But though they had been married many years, they had no children, and this grieved them very, very much indeed. But one day, as the queen was walking by the side of the river, at the bottom of the garden, she saw a poor little fish that had thrown itself out of the water, and lay gasping and nearly dead on the bank. Then the queen took pity on the little fish and threw it back again into the river, and before it swam away and lifted its head out of the water, and said, "I know what your wish is, and it shall be fulfilled. In return for your kindness to me, you will soon have a daughter." What the little fish had foretold soon came to pass, and the queen had a little girl, so very beautiful that the king could not cease looking on it for joy, and said he would hold a great feast, and make merry, and show the child to all the land. So he asked his kinsmen and nobles and friends and neighbors, but the queen had said, "I will have the fairies also, that they might be kind and good to our little daughter." Now there were 13 fairies in the kingdom, but as the king and queen had only 12 golden dishes for them to eat out of, they were forced to leave one of the fairies without asking her. The 12 fairies came, each with a high red cap on her head, and red shoes with high heels on her feet, and a long white wand in her hand. And after the feast was over, they gathered round in a ring and gave all their best gifts to the little princess. One gave her goodness, another beauty, another riches, and so on until she had all that was good in the world. Just as 11 of them had done blessing her, a great noise was heard in the courtyard, and word was brought that the 13th fairy would come, with a black cap on her head, and black shoes on her feet, and a broomstick in her hand. And presently up she came into the dining room. Now she had not been asked to the feast, she was very angry, and scolded the king and queen very much, and set to work to take her revenge. So she cried out, "The king's daughter shall in her 15th year be wounded by a spindle, and fall down dead." Then the 12th of the friendly fairies, who had not yet given her gift, came forward and said that the evil wish must be fulfilled, but that she could soften its mischief. So her gift was that the king's daughter, when the spindle wounded her, should not really die, but should only fall asleep for 100 years. However, the king hoped still to save his dear child altogether from the dread evil, so he ordered that all the spindles in the kingdom should be bought up and burnt. But all the gifts of the first 11 fairies were in the meantime fulfilled, for the princess was so beautiful and well behaved and good and wise that everyone who knew her loved her. It happened on that very day, she was 15 years old, the king and queen were not at home, and she was left alone in the palace. So she roved about by herself and looked at all the rooms and chambers, till at last she came to an old tower, to which there was a narrow staircase ending with a little door. In the door there was a golden key, and when she turned it, the door sprang open, and there sat an old lady, spinning away very busily. "Why, how now, good mother?" said the princess. "What are you doing there?" "Spinning," said the old lady, and nodded her head, humming a tune, while buzz went the wheel. "How prettily that little thing turns round," said the princess, and took the spindle and began to try and spin. But scarcely had she touched it before a fairy's prophecy was fulfilled, and the spindle wounded her, and she fell down lifeless on the ground. However, she was not dead, but had only fallen into a deep sleep, and the king and queen, who had just come home, and all their court fell asleep too, and the horses slept in the stables, and the dogs in the court, the pigeons on the housetop, and the very flies slept upon the walls. Even the fire on the hearth left off blazing, and went up to sleep. The jack stopped, and the spits that was turning about with a goose upon it for the king's dinner stood still, and the cook, who was at the moment pulling the kitchen boy by the hair to give him a box on the ear for something he had done amiss, let him go, and both fell asleep. The butler, who was slyly tasting the ale, fell asleep, with the jug at his lips, and thus everything stood still and slept soundly. A large hedge of thorns soon grew around the palace, and every year it became higher and thicker, till at last the old palace was surrounded and hidden so that not even the roof or the chimneys could be seen. But there went a report through all the land of the beautiful sleeping Briar Rose, though the king's daughter was called, so that from time to time several kings' sons came and tried to break through the thicket into the palace. This, however, none of them could ever do, for the thorns and bushes laid hold of them as it were with hands, and there they stuck fast and died wretchedly. After many, many years, they came to a king's son into the land, and the old man told him that story of the thicket of thorns, and how a beautiful place stood behind it, and how a wonderful princess called Briar Rose lay in it asleep, with all her court. He told, too, how he had heard from his grandfather that many, many princesses had come and had tried to break through the thicket, but that they had all stuck fast in it and died. Then the young prince said, "All this shall not frighten me. I will go and see this Briar Rose." The old man tried to hinder him, but he was bent upon going. Now that very day the 100 years were ended, and as the prince came to the thicket he saw nothing but beautiful flowering shrubs, through which he went at ease, and they shut in after him as thick as ever. Then he came at last to the palace, and there in the court lay the dogs asleep, and the horses were standing in the tables, and on the roof sat the pigeons fast asleep, with their heads under the wings. And when he came into the palace, the flies were sleeping on the walls, the spit was standing still, the bullet had the jug of ale at his lips, going to drink a draught. The maid sat with a fowl in her lap ready to be plucked, and the cook in the kitchen was still holding up her hand as if she was going to beat the boy. Then he went on still further, and all was so still that he could hear every breath he drew, till at last he came to the old tower, and opened the door of the little room in which Briar Rose was. And there she lay, fast asleep on a couch by the window. She looked so beautiful that he could not take his eyes off her, so he stooped down and gave her a kiss. But the moment he kissed her, she opened her eyes and awoke, and smiled upon him, and they went out together, and soon king and queen also awoke, and all the court, and gazed on each other with great wonder. And the horses shook themselves, and the dogs jumped up and barked. The pigeons took their heads from under their wings, and looked about and flew into the fields. The flies on the walls buzzed again. The fire in the kitchen blazed up. Round went the jack, and round went the spit, with the goose for the king's dinner upon it. The butler finished his draught of ale. The maid went on plucking the fowl, and the cook gave the boy the box on his ear. And then the prince and Briar Rose were married, and the wedding feast was given, and they lived happily together all their lives long. The Dog and the Sparrow, the Brothers Grimm. A shepherd's dog had a master who took no care of him, but often left him suffer the greatest hunger. At last he could bear it no longer, so he took it to his heels, and off he ran in a very sad and sorrowful mood. On the road he met a sparrow that said to him, "Why are you so sad, my friend?" "Because," said the dog, "I am very, very hungry, and have nothing to eat. "If that be all," answered the sparrow, "come with me into the next town, and I will soon find you plenty of food." So on they went together into the town, and as they passed by a butcher's shop, the sparrow said to the dog, "Stand there a little till I peck you down a piece of meat." So the sparrow perched upon the shelf, and having first looked carefully about her to see if anyone was watching her, she pecked and scratched at a steak that lay upon the edge of the shelf, till at last down it fell. Then the dog snapped it up and scrambled away with it into a corner, where he soon ate it all up. "Well," said the sparrow, "you shall have some more if you will. So come with me to the next shop, and I will peek you down under steak." When the dog had eaten this too, the sparrow said to him, "Well, my good friend, have you had enough now?" "I have had plenty of meat," answered he, "but I should like to have a piece of bread to eat after it." "Come with me then," said the sparrow, "and you shall soon have that too." So she took him to a baker's shop and pecked at 2 rolls that lay in the window till they fell down. And as the dog still wished for more, she took him to another shop and peeked down some more for him. When that was eaten, the sparrow asked him whether he had eaten enough now. "Yes," said he, "and now let us take a walk a little way out of the town." So they both went out upon the high road, but as the weather was warm, they had not gone far before the dog said, "I am very much tired. I should like to take a nap." "Very well," answered the sparrow, "do so, and in the meantime I will perch upon the bush." So the dog stretched himself out on the road and fell fast asleep. Whilst he slept, there came by a carter with a cart drawn by 3 horses, and loaded with 2 casks of wine. The sparrow, seeing that the carter did not turn out of the way, but would go on in the track in which the dog lay, so as to drive over him, called out, "Stop, stop, Mr. Carter, or it shall be the worse for you." But the carter, grumbling to himself, "You make it the worse for me indeed. What can you do?" cracked his whip and drove his cart over the poor dog, so that the wheels crushed him to death. "There," cried the sparrow, "thou cruel villain, thou hast killed my friend the dog. Now mind what I say. This deed of thine shall cost thee all thou art worth. Do your worst and welcome," said the brute. "What harm can you do me?" and passed on. But the sparrow crept under the tilt of the cart, and pecked at the bung of one of the casks till she loosened it, and then all the wine ran out, without the carter seeing it. At last he looked around and saw that the cart was dripping, and the cask quite empty. "What an unlucky wretch I am," cried he. "Not wretch enough yet," said the sparrow, as she lighted upon the head of one of the horses and pecked at him till he hurried up and kicked. When the carter saw this, he drew out his hatchet and aimed a blow at the sparrow, meaning to kill her. But she flew away, and the blow fell upon the poor horse's head with such a force that he fell down dead. "Unlucky wretch that I am," cried he. "Not wretch enough yet," said the sparrow, and as the carter went on with the other 2 horses, she again crept under the tilt of the cart, and pecked out the bung of the second cask, so that all the wine ran out. When the carter saw this, he again cried out, "Miserable wretch that I am!" But the sparrow answered, "Not wretch enough yet," and perched on the head of the second horse and peeked at him too. The carter ran up and struck her again with his hatchet, but away she flew, and the blow fell upon the second horse and killed him on the spot. "Unlucky wretch that I am," said he. "Not wretch enough yet," said the sparrow, and perching upon the third horse, she began to peck him too. The carter was mad with fury, without looking about him or caring what he was about, struck again at the sparrow, but filled his third horse as he had done the other 2. "Alas, miserable wretch that I am," cried he. "Not wretch enough yet," answered the sparrow as she flew away. "Now I punish thee at my own house." The carter was forced at last to leave his cart behind him, and to home overflowing with rage and vexation. "Alas," said he to his wife, "what ill luck has befallen me? My wine is all spilt, and my horses all 3 dead. Alas, husband," replied she, "and a wicked bird has come into the house, and has brought with all the other birds in the world. I am sure, and they have fallen upon our own corn in the loft, and are eating it up at such a rate." Away ran the husband upstairs, and saw thousands of birds sitting upon the floor eating up his corn, with the sparrow in the midst of them. "Unlucky wretch that I am," cried the carter, for he saw that the corn was almost gone. "Now wretch enough yet," Said the sparrow, thy cruelty shall cost thee thy life yet. And away she flew. The carter, seeing that he had thus lost all that he had, went down to his kitchen, and was still not sorry for what he had done, but sat himself angrily and sulkily in the chimney corner. But the sparrow sat on the outside of the window and cried, Carter, thy cruelty shall cost thee thy life. With that he jumped up in a rage, seized his hatchet and threw it in the sparrow. But it missed her, and only broke the window. The sparrow now hopped in, perched upon the window, and cried, Carter, it shall cost thee thy life. Then he became mad and blind with rage, and struck the window seat with such force that he cleft it in two. As the sparrow flew from place to place, the carter and his wife were so furious that they broke all the furniture, glasses, chairs, benches, the table, and at last the walls, without touching the bird at all. In the end, however, they taught her, and the wife said, Shall I kiss her at once? No, cried he, that is letting her off too easily. She shall die a much more cruel death. I will eat her. But the sparrow began to flutter about, and stretch out her neck, and cried, Carter, it shall cost thee thy life yet. With that he could wait no longer, so he gave his wife the hatchet, and cried, Wife, strike at the bird, and kill her in my hand. And the wife struck, but she missed her aim, and hit her husband on the head, so that he fell down dead, and the sparrow flew quietly home to her nest.
Moving here.
Okay, so the 12 dancing princesses, Brother Grimm. There was a king who had 12 beautiful daughters. They slept in 12 beds all in one room, and when they went to bed, the doors were shut and locked up. But every morning their shoes were found to be quite worn through, as if they had been dancing all night. And yet nobody could find out how it happened or where they had been. Then the king made it known to all the land that if any person could discover the secret and find out where it was that the princesses danced in the night, he should have done he liked the best for his wife, and should be the king after his death. But whoever tried and did not succeed after 3 days and nights should be put to death. A king's son soon came. He was well entertained, and in the evening was taken to the chamber next to the one where the princesses lay in their 12 beds. There he was to sit and watch where they went to dance, and in order that nothing might pass without his hearing it, the door of his chamber was left open. But the king's son soon fell asleep, and when he awoke in the morning he found that the princesses had all been dancing, for the soles of their shoes were full of holes. The same thing happened the second and third night, so the king ordered his head to be cut off. After him came several others, but they had all the same luck, and all their lost lives in the same manner. Now it chanced that an old soldier, who had been wounded in battle and could fight no longer, passed through the country where the kings reigned. And as he was traveling through a wood, he met an old woman, who asked him where he was going. I hardly know where I am going, or what I had better do, said the soldier, but I think I would like very well to find out where it is that the princess dance, and then in time I might be a king. Well, said the old dame, that is no very hard task. Only take care not to drink any of the wine which the princesses will bring to you in the evening, and as soon as she leaves you, pretend to be fast asleep. Then she gave him a cloak and said, as soon as you put that on, you will become invisible, and you will then be able to follow the princess wherever you go. When the soldier heard of all this good counsel, he determined to try his luck. So he went to the king and said he was willing to undertake the task. He was as well received as the others had been, and the king ordered the final robes to be given him. And when the evening came, he was led to the other chamber. Just as he was going to lie down, the eldest of the princesses bought him a cup of wine. But the soldier threw it all away secretly, taking care not to drink a drop. Then he laid himself down on his bed, and in a little while began to snore very loud, as if he was fast asleep. When the 12 princesses heard this, they laughed heartily. And the eldest said, this fellow too might have done a wiser thing than lose his life in this way. Then they rose up and opened the drawers and boxes and took out all their fine clothes and dressed themselves at the glass and skipped about as if they were eager to begin dancing. But the youngest said, I don't know how it is why you are so happy. I feel very uneasy. I am sure some mischance will befall us. You simpleton, said the eldest, you are always afraid. Have you forgotten how many kings' sons have already watched in vain? And as this soldier, even if I had not given him his sleeping draught, he would have slept sound enough. When they were all ready, they went and looked at the soldier, but he snored on and did not stir hand or foot. So they thought they were going quite safe, and the eldest went up to her bed and clapped her hands, and the bed sank into the floor, and the trap door flew open. The soldier saw them going down to the trap door, one after another, the eldest leading the way, and thinking he had no time to lose, he jumped up, put on the cloak which the old woman had given him, and followed them. But in the middle of the stairs he trod on the gown of the youngest princess, and she cried out to her sisters, "All is not right! Someone took hold of my gown!" "You silly creature," said the eldest, "it is nothing but a nail in the wall." Then down they all went, and at the bottom they found themselves in a most delightful grove of trees, and the leaves were all of silver and glittered and sparkled beautifully. The soldier wished to take away some token of the place, so he broke off a little branch, and there came a cloud noise from the tree. Then the youngest daughter said again, "I am sure all is not right. Did not you hear that noise?
I'll drive.
That never happened before." But the eldest said, "It is only our princes who are shouting for joy at our approach." Then they came to another grove of trees, where all the leaves were of gold, and afterwards to a third where the leaves were all glittering diamonds. And the soldier broke a branch from each, and every time there was a loud noise, which made the youngest sister tremble with fear. But the eldest still said it was only the princes who were crying for joy. So they went on till they came to a great lake, and at the side of the lake there lay 12 little boats, and 12 handsome princes in them, who seemed to be waiting there for the princesses. One of the princesses went into each boat, and the soldiers stepped into the same boat with the youngest. As they were rowing over the lake, the prince who was in the boat with the youngest princess and the soldier said, "I do not know why it is, but though I am rowing with all thy might, we do not get on so fast as usual, and I am quite tired. The boat seems very heavy today." "It is only the heat of the weather," said the princess. "I feel very warm too." On the other side of the lake stood a fine illuminated castle, from which came the merry music of horns and trumpets. There they all landed and went to a castle, and each prince danced with his princess. And the soldier, who was all the time invisible, danced with them too. And when any of the princesses had a cup of wine set by her, he drank it all up, so that when she put the cup of her mouth it was empty. At this, too, the youngest sister was terribly frightened, but the eldest always silenced her. They danced on till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then all their shoes were worn out, so that they were obliged to leave off. The princes rowed them back again over the lake, but this time the soldier placed himself on the boat with the eldest princess, and on the opposite shore they took leave of each other, the princesses promising to come again the next night. When they came to the stairs, the soldier ran on before the princess, and laid himself down, and as the 12 sisters slowly came up very much tired, they heard him snoring in his bed. So they said, "Now all is quite safe." Then they undressed themselves, put away their fine clothes, pulled off their shoes, and went to bed. In the morning the soldier said nothing about what had happened, but determined to see more of the strange adventure, and went again the second and third night. And everything happened just as before. The princesses danced each time till the shoes were worn in pieces, and they returned home. However, on the third night the soldier carried away one of the golden cups as a token of where he had been. As soon as that time came when he was to declare the secret, he was taken before the king with the 3 branches and the golden cup, and the 12 princesses stood listening behind the door to hear what he would say. And when the king asked him, "Where do my 12 daughters dance at night?" he answered, "With 12 princes in a castle on the ground." And then he told the king all that had happened, and showed him the 3 branches and the golden cup which he had brought with him. Then the king called for the princesses and asked them whether what the soldier said was true. And when they saw that there was discovered, and that there was no use of denying what had happened, they confessed it all. And the king asked the soldier which of them he would choose for his wife. And he answered, "I am not very young, so I'll have the eldest." And they were married that very day. Then the soldier was chosen to be the king's heir. How now? So this will be the last one we do for the day, I think. Or at least for now. Okay, the fisherman and his wife, Brothers Grimm. There was once a fisherman who lived with his wife in a pigsty, close by the seaside. The fisherman used to go out all day long a-fishing, and one day as he sat on the shore with his rod, looking at the sparkling waves and watching his line, all in a sudden his float was dragged away deep in the water. And in drawing it up, he pulled out a great fish. But the fish said, "Pray, let me live. I am not a real fish. I am an enchanted prince. Put me in the water again, and let me go." "Oh, ho!" said the man. "You need not take so many words about the matter. I will have nothing to do with a fish that can talk. So swim away, sir, as soon as you please." Then he put him back into the water, and the fish departed straight down into the bottom, and left a long streak of blood behind him on a weave. When the fisherman went home to his wife in the pigsty, he told her how he had caught a great fish, and how it had told him it was an enchanted prince, and how, on hearing it speak, he had let it go again. "Did not you ask it for anything?" said the wife. "We live very wretchedly here in this nasty dirty pigsty. Do go back and tell the fish we want a snug little cottage." The fisherman did not much like the business. However, he went to the seashore, and when he came back there the water looked all yellow and green, and he stood at the water's edge and said, "Oh, man of sea, hearken to me. My wife, Isabel, will have her own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." Then the fish came swimming to him, and said, "Well, what is her will? What does your wife want?" "Ah," said the fisherman, "she says that when I had caught you, I ought to have asked you for something before I let you go. She does not like living any longer in the pigsty, and wants a snug little cottage." "Go home, then," said the fish. "She is in the cottage already." So the man went home and saw his wife standing at the door of a nice, trim little cottage. Come in," said she. "Is not this much better than the filthy pigsty we had?" And there was a parlor and a bedchamber and a kitchen, and behind the cottage there was a little garden planted with all sorts of flowers and fruits, and there was a country yard behind, full of ducks and chickens. "Ah," said the fisherman, "how happily we shall live now." "We will try to do so at least," said his wife. Everything went right for a week or two, and then Dame Isabel said, "Husband, there is not near room enough for us in this cottage. The courtyard and the garden are a great deal too small. I would like to have a large stone castle to live in. Go to the fish again and tell him to give us a castle." "Wife," said the fisherman, "I don't like to go to him again, for perhaps he will be angry. We ought to be easy with a pretty cottage to live in." "Nonsense," said the wife. "He will do it very willingly, I know. Go along and try." The fisherman went, but his heart was very heavy, and when he came to the sea it looked blue and gloomy, though it was very calm, and he went close to the edge of the waves and said, "Oh, man of the sea, hearken to me. My wife, Isabel, will have her own will. He has sent me to beg a boon of thee." "Well, what does she want now?" said the fish. "Ah," said the man, dolefully, "my wife wants to live in a stone castle." "Go home, then," said the fish. "She is standing at the gate of it already." So away went the fisherman and found his wife standing before the gate of a great castle. "See," said she, "is not this grand?" With that they went into the castle together and found a great manservant there, and the rooms all richly furnished, and full of golden chairs and tables. And behind the castle was a garden, and around was a park, half a mile long, full of sheep and goats and hares and deer, and in the courtyard were stables and cow-houses. "Well," said the man, "now we will live cheerful and happy in the beautiful castle for the rest of our lives." "Perhaps we may," said the wife, "but let us sleep upon it, before we may make up our minds to that." So they went to bed. The next morning, when Dame Isabel awoke, it was broad daylight, and she logged the fisherman with her elbow, and said, "Get up, husband, and bestir yourself, for we must be king of all the land." "Wife, wife," said the man, "why would we wish to be the king? I would not be king." "Then I will," said she. "But, wife," said the fisherman, "how can you be king? The fish cannot make you a king." "Husband," said she, "say no more about it, but go and try. I will be king." So the man went away quite sorrowful to think that his wife should want to be the king. This time the sea looked a dark gray color and was overspread with curling waves and the ridges of foam, as he cried out, "Oh, man of the sea, hearken to me. My wife Isabel will have her own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." Well, what would she have now? Said the fish. Alas, said the poor man, my wife wants to be king. Go home, said the fish, she is king already. Then the fisherman went home, and as he came close to the palace, he saw a troop of soldiers, and heard the sound of drums and trumpets. And when he went in, he saw his wife sitting in a throne of gold and diamond, with a golden crown upon her head, and on each side of her stood 6 fair maidens, each a head taller than the other. Well, wife, said the fisherman, are you king? Yes, said she, I am king. And when he had looked at her for a long time, he said, Ah, wife, what a fine thing it to be a king. Now we shall never have anything more to wish for as long as we live. I don't know how that may be, said she, never a long time. I am king, it is true, but I begin to be tired of that, and I think I should be like the emperor. Alas, wife, why should you wish to be emperor? Said the fisherman. Husband, said she, go to the fish. I say I will be emperor. Ah, wife, replied the fisherman, the fish cannot make an emperor, I am sure, and I should not like to ask him for such a thing. I am king, said Isabel, and you are my slave, so go at once. So the fisherman was forced to go, and he muttered, as he went along, this will come to no good. It is too much to ask. The fish will be tired at last, and then we shall be sorry for what we have done. He soon came to the seashore, and the water was quite black and muddy, and a mighty whirlwind blew over the waves and rolled them about. But he went as near as he could to the water's brink, and said, O man of the sea, hearken to me, my wife Isabel will have her own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee. What would she have now? Said the fish. Ah, said the fisherman, she wants to be emperor. Go home, said the fish, she is emperor already. So he went home again, and as he came near, he saw his wife, Isabel, sitting on a very lofty throne made of solid gold, with a great crown on her head full 2 yards high, and on each side of her stood her guards and attendants in a row, each one smaller than the other, from the tallest giant down to a little dwarf no bigger than my finger. And before her stood princes and dukes and earls, and the fisherman went up to her and said, Wife, are you emperor? Yes, said she, I am emperor. Ah, said the man as he gazed upon her, what a fine thing is to be emperor. Husband, said she, why should we stop at being emperor? I will be pope next. Oh, wife, said he, how can you be pope? There is but one pope at a time in Christendom. Husband, said she, I will be pope this very day. But replied the husband, the fish cannot make you pope. What nonsense, said she, if he can make an emperor, he can make a pope. Go and try him. So the fisherman went, but when he came to the shore, the wind was raging, and the sea was tossed up and down in boiling waves, and the ships were in trouble, and rolled fiercely upon the tops of the billows. In the middle of the heavens there was a little piece of blue sky, but towards the south all was red, as if a dreadful storm was rising. At this sight the fisherman was dreadfully frightened, and he trembled so that his knees knocked together. But still he went down near to the shore, and said, O man of the sea, hearken to me, my wife Isabel will have her own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee. What does she want now? Said the fish. Ah, said the fisherman, my wife wants to be pope. Go home, said the fish, she is pope already. Then the fisherman went home, and found Isabel sitting on a throne that was 2 miles high, and she had 3 great crowns on her head, and around her stood all the pomp and power of the church, and on each side of her were 2 rows of burning lights, of all sizes, the greatest at large, at the highest was the biggest tower in the world, and at last no larger than a small rushlight. Wife, said the fisherman, as he looked at all this greatness, are you pope? Yes, said she, I am pope. Well, wife, replied he, it is a grand thing to be pope, and now you must be easy, for you can be nothing greater. I will think about that, said the wife. Then they went to bed, but Dame Isabel could not sleep all night for thinking what would she be next. At last, as she was dropping to sleep, morning broke, and the sun rose. Ah, thought she, as she woke up and looked at it through the window. After all, I cannot prevent the sun rising. At this thought she was very angry, and weakened her husband, and said, "Husband, go to the fish and tell him I must be lord of the sun and moon." The fisherman was half asleep, but the thought frightened him so much that he started and fell out of bed. "Alas, wife," said he, "cannot you be easy with being pope?" "No," said she, "I am very uneasy as long as the sun and moon rise without my leave. Go to the fish at once." Then the man went shivering with fear, and as he was going down to the shore a dreadful storm arose, so that the trees and the very rocks shook, and all the heavens became black and stormy clouds, and the lightnings played and the thunders rolled, and you might have seen in the sea great black waves, swelling up like mountains with crowns of white foam upon their heads. And the fisherman crept towards the sea and cried out as well as he could, "O men of the sea, hearken to me. My wife Isabel will have her own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." "What does she want now?" said the fish. "Ah," said he, "she wants to be lord of the sun and the moon." "Go home," said the fish, "to your pigsty again." And there they live to this very day.